we left off last time with a with our situation. What do you do if oh, they were? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So we left off, we were talking about all these cases. What happens when you get stuck on Shabbat, Friday night turns into Shabbat, and you are not home, you are on the road. Different scenarios about how you deal with the case of your wallet. That what do you do with it? How do you get it home? Um, so the last case we dealt with, if I'm not mistaken, and we can just let me know if I'm not remembering. I feel we did Dalid, which was that you have a cheresh, a shota. So you give it to the shota, the one who is mentally not with it at all, because they are considered in halacha to not have any da'at. No, there's no sense of
what page is that?
Knowledge or awareness. It's Reish Samach Vav Sif. We're just reviewing Sif Dalid. Okay. So you see here it says Mem Aleph on the top. Okay, we're gonna go back right over here, this page. Okay, so now that was what we talked about last time. We said that Cheresh has a Da'at Kalishta, a low level of knowledge. That there is some working, functioning mind there, but to a lower extent. And so that's why we prefer giving it to the Shota. Now, Sifhei, let's begin with Sifhei now. Okay, and by the way, everyone on Zoom, you can hear me? The connection's okay? Okay, good. Okay, so Sifhei, Shota v'katan. What happens if you get stuck and you're with a Shota and a katan? So Yitinenu la Shota. Shakatan yavo lichlal das. Now we assume that a child, a minor, has no das. That's why we don't hold them accountable for any of the mitzvahs. If they committed an avera, there is no accountability because how can you hold someone accountable when they don't have the knowledge and understanding to make decisions? We assume that they don't have das. So why
I
do we
would
prefer the
take
shot?
I would take your ear out of that category.
I'll tell you, yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
You probably teach this class too.
Yeah. So the assumption here is that why do we prefer the shota? Because the katan will arrive to a generally speaking, a katan will arrive to a time when they have das, they have knowledge and understanding. So therefore, avoid giving it to a child because you are going to teach them the wrong thing. So that's that decision. Cheresh v'katan. What if you're stuck on the road and it's just you and a cheresh and a katan? Who do you give the money to? Who do you give the little sack to with money? You give it yitnenu lemishi yirtza, whoever you want. Your choice, dealer's choice.
Before we said cheresh, you give it to cheresh first of all, the first case, right?
When it was a cheresh with a shota, you give it to the shota.
Okay.
When you give it to it's a shota and a katan, you give it to the shota. What if it's a cheresh and a katan? You can choose who you want to give it to. Why? So look at the Mishnah Berurah now in Sif Katan Yud Gimel Lemishi Yirtza. He says here, look, there's a mile for each one. A child, is going to eventually reach the age of knowledge. So that's not great. And a cheresh, a daita klishta, is some level of knowledge there and understanding. So maybe there's some level of responsibility towards mitzvos. So it's you can make a case for the child is going to be a full knowledgeable member of Jewish society. So this is really a bad educational bad, you're giving them a bad education right now. You're training them the wrong way. But the cheresh, okay, they're not gonna, maybe their situation is not going to change, right? The deaf mute, but there is some working knowledge there that halachically there's some level of responsibility. So giving it to them is also not so simple. So at the end of the day, here it's your call. I'll take a look at the Be'er Halacha on this one though. The Be'er Halacha says Yitznei Lamishi Yirtza. You see that on the left side of the page there. In my edition, it's about 9 lines down, I think, from the top of the Be'er Halacha on that page. There's Kosav Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim writes, Yira Eli Dahayu Davka She'eno Ben. She'eno Bno. When is it that you can give it to whoever you want? When the child that's with you is not your child. Aval beno katan shu bar chinuch midrabanan. But if it's your child, right, which is at the age of education, so not a 4-year-old maybe, let's say, but they're at the age of education, right? Like my son just stepped out of the room. He's 9 years old, so that's already there. You can teach them concepts. They can understand them. They can understand why certain things are the way they are. So you have so the parents have an obligation from midrabanan of chinuch. It's a mitzvah the rabbanon to teach your children the right way to do things. It's again, it's a rabbinic mitzvah. So yitnenu lecheresh or shota. So then in that situation, it's always better to give it to a cheresh or a shota because it's your child, and therefore there's an extra piece going on here, which is the mitzvah of chinuch. Umistapek sham. Okay, fine. So then he goes on and says, and then it's a doubt if it's possible. What happens if afili macheresh v'shota hu beno? Maybe even if the cheresh, maybe it's a case of the cheresh and shota is even if the cheresh and shota hu beno, they're your son. She'enam bar chinuch kamo katan. You have a child who's in one of these categories, and then you have a minor child. So who do you give it to? So maybe it's better to give it, to the cheresh and shota, who are your son, than to give it to the minor.
Can you hear me?
Because what was that?
Question.
Yeah.
Why is it the Rabbanan? Is it with the right so that you have to teach your children?
You're saying because Vishinantan Levanecha?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's strictly.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. Vishinantan Levanecha, right? You're supposed to teach to your children. That's more of a mitzvah when it's the understanding the Gemara has of Vishinantan Levanecha is more generally the mitzvah of teaching Torah to your child, teaching Torah. The mitzvah of chinuch is interesting. I think it's actually a little bit different. I think it's more about training. It's almost like an internship, as opposed to learning in the classroom. I've usually Vishanat Levanecha is like teaching. The mitzvah of chinuch midrabanan is that the examples given in the Gemara are when your child is at an age when they understand how to put on tzitzis, they can understand it. So you should show them how to put on tzitzis the right way. When they get to the age when they can do the mitzvah of lulav and esrog, they know how to do the na'anuim, they know how to shake. So you should teach them properly how to do the mitzvah. Like here, shake like this, make the bracha, shake like this. Vishnat Levanecha is a more general category of teaching your children Torah. And the mitzvah of chinuch midrabanan is really like the training of practically like, the internship. How do you do this? Showing them the steps of what to do and when to do it. And that's, I think, the distinction here.
It doesn't necessarily work, but okay.
I mean that Mida Oraisa, there's no, in this situation that's being described, there's no mitzvah, Mida Oraisa. I mean, it's not a textual. The Vishyam Levanecha is textual learning. You're teaching them the text and teaching them the mitzvahs in an intellectual way. The mitzvah of chinuch is built on top of that. I don't think it's very different. I think it's built on top of that where it's the training part, the actual focusing on the maaseh, on the actions of the child, as opposed to the reading them the book, reading them or describing to them what is the mitzvah. And therefore, that's why if it's a beno hakatan, let's say it's not bar chinuch, they're very young, then the mitzvah of chinuch doesn't apply yet. The mitzvah of chinuch kicks in when they can do certain different things, which, certain different activities become more relevant at different ages. So you're not going to train your 3 or 4-year-old on how to do na'anuim for lulav and esrog, even though you might give it to them and they'll shake it, whatever. You're not like worried are you doing it correctly, right? When they get to a certain age, I don't remember if the Gemara gives an age. I think it's, you have to, so every kid, the fi darko, you have to know your kid when they're ready to be trained. Okay. Back to the Shulchan Aruch now. Sif Katan Vav. Sorry, Sif Vav, excuse me. Yesh Omrim, there are those that say, Keshenosno le'echad me'elu. If in these scenarios you have to give it to one of these three, Chere, Shota, V'Katan. Whatever the calculation is, you end up giving it to one of them. Manicho alav keshu mehalech v'not mimenu keshu omed. So you have to give it to them, place it on them, when they are in motion, and take it from them when they stand. like we described with the animal back in Sif Beis, because then it's only half a malacha, and half a malacha is not a full malacha. That's a violation of Torah law. They'd be derabanan. It's a problem, but we're in a less than ideal scenario here, so we're trying to avoid the deoraisas. And take a look at Yud Dalet for a moment here. Let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah Yud Dalet. Tifkat on Yud Dalet. Kishu mahalech v'chaniz kalab behemas v'sif beis, just like with the animal in Sif Beis. V'hatam. Well, what's the reason? He describes here Kadei Shelo Ya'asu HaCheresh Shota v'Katan Isra Da'arais Alado. So that way, the Cheresh, the Shota, and the Katan, the deaf mute, the one who is completely mentally incompetent, or not incompetent, mentally just like not there at all. Like they are probably someone here with a mental illness that is, out of touch with reality, or a minor. They shouldn't do an Isra Da'arais, a biblical prohibition based on your al yado, through your hand, or as a result of you. Even though I'm not required to worry about their resting and their non-observance of or their non-performance of malachos like I am for a behema. Nevertheless, now this is a very important concept. It is prohibited to feed them prohibited foods with my own hands. There's a whole simon at the very end of Hilchot Shabbat dedicated to your minor in particular, as it relates to the observance of Shabbos. That's in Shin Lamed. Where is it here? So I thought it was Shin Lamed. What did they write here? Shin Mem Gimel, because Shin Mem Daled is the last, or Shin Daled Mem is the last, the Sif in Hilchot Shabbos. And over there, when it talks about a katan, right? So this is the general principle: is katan ochel nevelos ein based in mitzuvin hafrisho. That if a child a minor is eating the nevelos, the Beis Din doesn't have to is not obligated to separate them. Hey, you're eating, a treif piece of chicken. The Beis Din doesn't have to step in. Aval aviv. But the parent, right, has an obligation. Mitzuva ligorbo should, I've asked to yell. Ligor means to yell at them. You could figure out your own way to deal with your child. But the idea is here you're going to try to ulahafrisha isur deoraisa when they are doing isurim deoraisa. So on Shabbos you're supposed to stop them. So this happens in my house. I have a child actually sitting near me right here. But if they're doing something that's asa midrabanan, I don't get as kerfuffled about it. Well, they're doing Issa Daraisa. I do go over and say, we don't do this on Shabbos. More so than what? You have when you were younger, you did more. Like what? Don't worry, we'll talk about after this year. Okay. And then the Shulchan Aruch here adds very importantly, but for me to actively do it, if my child is doing something on their own, right? They're 3, 4. They're playing with some toy that has some, component which is making the noise. It's one thing, but to sort of feed them nevela, like here, actively giving it to them, asur afilu dvarim shasur midivrei sofrim, even if it's only midrabanan, not allowed, right? The basar b'chalav, it's basar b'chalav, right? If salami and cheese together, if they're both not cooked together, it's only midrabanan a problem. Okay, if I give that to them, that is absolutely prohibited, right? You're not supposed to accustom them to doing chilul Shabbos and umoed and violating laws of the holidays. Even if it's this, there's a rabbanon. You should not be actively, giving them those things to do. So, anyways. That idea applies here as well. You have people who are obligated in mitzvos, and so you're not supposed to through your actively giving it to them, you shouldn't be ideally doing that. So even though you are obligated, even though you're not allowed to give them the something usher to do, here that's why here you're avoiding that by giving them when they're walking, taking it away when they're standing, etc., pulling the same shtick as we talked about in Sif Beis. So you avoid the Doraisa because you don't want them to avoid a violate Doraisa because of you. Now, the Ramah here adds something very interesting. I wouldn't say important because this case is not so frequently happening in people's lives. So I'm just going to say it's interesting. The Ramah writes here, V'davka kishenosen lahem mishachashecha. When does this shtick have to be pulled? When you give it to them after it's dark and it's already Shabbos. If you give it to them, the item, the bag of coins, before Shabbos starts, mutter b'cholinin. They can walk, and I don't have to tell them. Okay, I don't have to start taking it when they stand, taking it when they walk, put it back on them. No, I don't have to worry about that. Why not? Mishnah Berurah writes here in Tezvav, that's not called ma'achil biyadayim. If I give my child a toy an hour before Shabbos to play with, and then this is a bad example though, because here you should stop them. But put it this way: even if you gave your child a toy an hour beforehand, we wouldn't, and they keep playing in 2 hours, for 2 hours into Shabbos. We wouldn't call that ma'achil biyadayim because when I gave it to them, I didn't have intention that they were going to do this on Shabbos, and it wasn't Shabbos. It was perfectly permissible for them to play with the toy. Then Shabbos started, so now it's a question: do I have a mitzvah to la frisho? Is it a deoraisa? Is it a derabanan? Do I have to separate them from whatever they're doing? So here, when I gave them the bag of coins, it was perfectly permissible to carry the bag of coins. It wasn't Shabbos yet. So therefore, that's not called ma'achil biyadayim. Therefore, I don't have to pull the shtick. Take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. Because right now, when I gave it to them, there's no isser. And what happens when they stop and they stand? So they've stood. Okay, now there wasn't an akira because they started walking before Shabbos, but now they stop. So now what's going to happen? They're going to continue walking at some point. Now there'll be an akira, and then they'll stop again. At some point, there'll be a hanacha. So now there's a potential here for an issur d'oraisa to be violated. So what's the story? What's my story here? Right? And then they're going to do an akira. But we'll say, but they're making their own choice here. The cheresh, the shota, and the katan, they chose to stop, and they choose to go. Okay? Therefore, it's not my responsibility. I lost my spot. Hello,
But I mean,
when they're doing this, I don't have an obligation to protest that they're violating a malacha on Shabbos. It's not my business. Therefore, I don't have to take the sack, the little bag from him when he stands. When it comes to an animal, when I am obligated in my animal resting on Shabbos and not performing malacha, and also the animal is following after my every call and my I'm doing something that's leading them, which is another separate issue. Even if you place it on the animal before Shabbos starts, I am obligated to take it off the animal when it stands after dark, whether it's the animal needs to stop to urinate or something else, whatever reason the animal decides I need to stop for a moment. So then in that case, I do need to take it off because my animal doing malacha is my problem. Forget ma'achil biyadayim. I have to ensure that my animal doesn't do malacha. Therefore, it's a very different standard. And then after it starts walking, I put it back on the back of the animal. So that it shouldn't do an akira hanacha with my kis, with my baggie, on Shabbos, v'yavor al isurei Torah, and it'll be a violation of Torah law because the animal doing the malacha is my problem. Okay, v'hamagin Avraham mitzared lahachmir af b'vod yom. The Magen Avraham, just in general, in this case, even when with the katan, the chereshot of the katan was machmir, and said you should still, even if you gave it to them b'od yom on Friday afternoon, you should still be careful and do this whole shtick with the take it off and put it on. V'nira de bekarmelis yesh l'hakel, though it appears if you're in a karmelis, which is most of our areas that we encounter are a karmelis. It's like a reshus harabim de rabbanon, place where it's a public thoroughfare, but it's not one where 600,000 people are passing by every day on that road. I would say kimat all the roads up here in Westchester are of that nature. when we get to Chelek Daled of Shulchan Aruch of the Mishnah Berurah in Orach Chaim, we'll talk about the Mishnah Berurah's opinion is that you have a road that goes from city to city. So something like the Hutch may be a problem that may be considered the Rishus Rabbim D'Oraisa, though many don't hold of that. So we'll get to all those details. Yeah, so a Carmelis is I'm nicknaming it. It's called a Carmelis. It's basically a Rishus Rabbim D'Rabbanan. It's a public road, but it's not considered on a biblically public space. You cannot build an Eruv. I'm just putting it out there. An Eruv cannot be built to help you with the Rishus Rabbim D'Oraisa. If you have a Rishus Rabbim D'Oraisa, an Eruv is not going to help you.
What does D'Oraisa mean?
Meaning that it's a place that 600,000 people pass by on any given day. That requires a lot of people to be in one area. I don't know how many people live here in New Rochelle, Scarsdale. I don't know what the total population is if you add it up between New Rochelle, Scarsdale, White Plains, all these. I don't think you're getting to 600,000. They're big. It's a big area here. If you add maybe all of Westchester County, maybe I don't know. I don't know what the population of Westchester County is. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, the greater Columbus, Ohio area, which is not I think it was the 14th biggest city in America, which everyone thinks is a small town. Somewhere 600,000-700,000 people. Like that's a population of everybody in the general area there. So 600,000 people passing in one area is very hard. There are poskim who claim that in Broadway in New York City is a Rishus Rabbim D'Oraisa. If you believe such a thing, which maybe very well could be true, then you can't build an Eruv that includes Broadway. It's impossible. So any place that has an Eruv is enclosing an area that is a Carmelis, that is basically midrabanan, a public space. So if you're in that kind of a space, maybe you could already make it here because the highest potential of Isser is only D'Rabbanan, right? Carrying in that space is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. So if your animal is carrying in that space, it's also only an Isser D'Rabbanan. So the whole thing maybe here of the Chereshot V'Katan doing something wrong is already lower. Maybe then I don't have to worry about if I gave it to them before Shabbos. Okay, I don't have to worry because the orders are avoided here.
Rabbi, for Westchester County has a population of 990,000. But
Wow.
that doesn't mean they're all together.
Yeah, that's includes northern Westchester. Right. Meaning on any given road, even if you have 990,000 people, the reality is
the same road.
Not everyone on every single day. You need 2/3 of them basically to be going on a given road for it to become a Rishus Rabbim D'Oraisa.
Not even close.
Which is probably, again, you could probably. I think I've told this apocryphal story. I think it's an apocryphal story, but maybe it's a true story. That apparently Rav Moshe used to, out the window of his apartment on the Lower East Side, he would be able to see the FDR, and he would count how many cars were passing by on the FDR. He spent the day counting. It seems like a crazy story for him to count all the cars. Anyway, so he tried to calculate. Maybe it's a true story. I don't know. Maybe it's in the Igros Moshe somewhere. I'm not a Bucky in Igros Moshe from cover to cover.
When you talk about Broadway, for example, do you have to take into account the entire length of Broadway, or can you neighbor like above 200th Street or something like that, where it's much less traveled?
That's an interesting question. I don't remember the answer offhand when that discussion came up when I was learning this in Smicha. I think you can look at it in a certain area. And that's why there is like when you go to Washington, you're in Washington Heights, there is an Eruv up there that includes Broadway in Washington Heights. It's a good question.
Why would you go?
I don't remember what are the limits. I mean, obviously you can have roads that keep going and go, Route 1 here and Highway 1 here on the East Coast, right? The Boston Post Road over by Mamaroneck. If you follow that road, you'll end up at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. That road, it goes Yashar.
Yeah, but isn't that like you're enclosing an area, you're cutting it off from one side to the other?
When you make an Eruv, sure.
So when you have a route,
but if you have
discussed how many people are walking between this street and that street,
right,
logically.
Yeah, that's why I think I just don't want to. I don't want to say it with 100% confidence. I'm not saying with. I'm not saying with 100% confidence. I would need to look into that one. I think you could talk about a particular area because otherwise, certain roads never end. They might change names, they might change numbers, but there's a continued connection there. That's a good question. I think the answer is that you can view it in its own area. Okay. Now, let's take a look at Sif Zion up on top. What happens when none of these are available to you? Shulchan Aruch writes, Im ein imo shum echad mikol elu. None of these people are possible. No animal, no cheresh, shot the bekatan. You are on your own. And you have a little bag that you're holding of coins, of money. Let's say you got $1,000 in this little baggie. And so do I have an obligation maybe to just drop it and say, okay, I got to cut my losses. This is what halacha requires of me? Apparently not. This is straight from the Gemara. Im eini mo shum echad mikol elu. We can turn the page. Yital telenu pachos me'arba amos. So you should carry it less than 4 amos at a time. So you walk. 4 amos is about 6 to 7 feet. Okay. So imagine you have to walk.
Amount this the size of this.
Yeah. So you got approximately 6 to 7 feet in total, 4 amos. So you walk 6 feet. Okay, we're all very familiar with 6 feet now. Nobody can tell me that we don't know what 6 feet means. How much you can visualize. We can visualize 6 feet.
Famous 6 feet.
Famous 6 feet. You know, by the way, at the beginning of the pandemic, when they start saying, "Oh, stay 6 feet away," we were before everybody else. So we had asked to hear, even that first Shabbos before we closed and whatever, that some doctor we spoke to said, "Yeah, try to stay 6 feet away." And
they said up to 13.
I think Rabbi Willig, we ended up consulting with Rabbi Willig on a particular question, and Rabbi Willig said 6 feet. Dalet Amos. Oh, he got very excited. It was like Dalet Amos. You know that it's like a halachic shear. You know, that's what Rabbi Morgenson reported that to me that he in the conversation.
13 also they extended it.
They made it bigger.
So
anyway, so we can all visualize what 6 feet. So we walk 6 feet, let's say. Stop. Pause, then walk again 6 feet, then pause, then walk again 6 feet, then pause, and you would have to do this all the way till the end. Now, that requires a tremendous amount of discipline. So here's the question. Why didn't Chazal just say this is what you could do from the beginning? You understand why we're stopping. The idea is here that the item never traveled a continuous 4 amos. Because one of the ways that you can, there are multiple ways you can violate the mitzvah of the prohibition of hotzah or achnasa. You go from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Harab. So you go in from, out from a private domain, out into the public domain. You can go from the public domain to the private domain. There you don't even need 4 amos. Going from one to the other is the violation. The other way you violate on a biblical level is you are mavir dalad amos Rishus Harab. You carry something 4 amos continuously in the Rishus Harabim. So if I stop, what I do is that's basically a hanacha, that's a resting, and then when I continue, I restart, that's a new akira, and I don't go more than 4 amos. I stop again, and I continue this whole cycle until the end. Now, neither Rabbanan, this is not allowed, but again, we're in less than ideal circumstances. So why didn't Chazal just say this is a better solution from the beginning? The animal and the cheresh, just you carry it less than 4 amos at a time.
Or even the animal carries it for you.
Well, but then you'd have to get your animal to carry it. Then you have to get your animal to stop every 4 amos. That's harder to do. You control your own actions. The animal might just keep walking, and you might think you train your animal well, but you might not train them so perfectly that they stop on the dime. So he says here in Sif Tez Zayin, Sif Katan Tez Zayin, the Shvus Chamur Hu Me'od. This is a very serious, yeah, see it there?
Right.
The Shvus Chamor Humor, there's a very serious Shvus, like, the Rabbanon that's commanded here, and I will explain what the Rabbanon will talk about in a second. So, Dilma lo yitzam saying b'shiur of yava laholich arba amos b'rishus harabim. Okay. And perhaps you will you'll walk more than 4 amos in a public place. Uvakoshi gadol hitiru chazal davar zeh mishum seda. meaning the rabbis didn't allow you to do this even less than 4 amos. They were very strict about this because why? You might not know the difference between 4 amos and between 3.5 amos and 4.5 amos. I can say we know 6 feet, but at the end of the day, you're still estimating. And so since it's very hard to know perfectly what is 4 amos, the rabbis were like, we don't like you carrying at all, even half an amma, right? So it's a very serious dirabanan, and therefore it was only Bikoshi Gadol with the under great difficulty. They said try this first. You have an animal, you have a cheresh, you have a shota, a katam. That's better. Do that first. Only once you have no option left. This is the option of last resort. And Chazal allowed it in here because of Seda, because of the loss. And people get irrational with their money, and they won't always follow. They get very worked up about their money, and therefore they're going to make bad decisions. So let them do this instead of making the worst decision of violating a biblical prohibition. They only allowed this here, though, when there was no other choice. And therefore Chazal didn't allow it unless all these other avenues were not available to you. Those are better because this is a very serious derabanan, because if you violate this derabanan, you are very close to a deoraisa. Undoubtedly, literally you're close, because you think, I went 3.5 amos. I'm a half an amma from a deoraisa. One time I might make a boo boo. I don't have any I don't have any way to measure. So this is a last resort. So Yud Zayin now let's talk about how you do this pachos mi arba amos. Okay, again you probably will look like you will look to an onlooker who doesn't understand halacha. You will look like a very strange person. You walk, take 3 steps, stop. Take 3 steps, stop. How does this all work? Yud Zayin, Pachos B'chule. Ve'ezeh eino moel el le'inyan tiltul b'reshus harabim or b'karmelis. This only will help you if you're trying to avoid carrying a reshus harabim or a karmelis. Sha'isr hu mishum tiltul arba amos, because the prohibition is carrying 4 amos continuously. Okay, mehanizeh. This will help for that. Aval me karmelis l'reshus hayachid or l'reshus harabim. Let's say you carry from a karmelis to another reshus, whether it's a reshus hayachid or reshus harabim d'oraisa. So what's the story? What do I do? Because there, there the prohibition is carrying from one domain to another. You could violate that even with a half an amma. I walk from inside my house to outside my house. I don't have to even go 4 amos to violate the prohibition.
Wait, is your backyard not considered your?
If your backyard is fenced in, it's a reshus hayachid.
Okay,
if it's fenced,
so you can go from your house.
If it's not fenced in, it's not reshus hayachid actually.
Right.
Yeah, then it's actually probably a karmelis, probably part of the continuous. Right. Even though you have the deed to the property, halacha doesn't view it as such. But if you have a fence, if your yard is fenced in, it's not a problem. Then it's a reshus hayachid. Even if, let's say, you were living in a city where there was a place where there was no eruv, but your backyard is fenced in, you can carry in your backyard. Not a problem at all. I remember, so when I was in the University of Michigan, there was no eruv at the time. Now they've built, after my time, they built an eruv around the area, the Jewish community, around the Hillel. And I remember I was invited out to the rabbi there for Shabbos Chol HaMoed Sukkos, and his yard was not fenced in the back. It was fenced in on 3 sides, but not the 4th side. Meaning you could walk from the front yard directly to the backyard. There was like a fence around the other sides, and he made his own eruv wires, to sort of enclose in the rest of the space, so that way they could carry from their home to the sukkah, because it wasn't like a sukkah that was attached right onto the edge of the house. So I remember he had string, to complete the enclosure of his backyard. Anyways, so even with a half an amma, the pachos thing doesn't help you. So how are you going to deal with that? I mean, it's very nice. I'll get all the way to my house. I'll look like a fool walking 3 steps at a time. I finally get to the door of my house. I can't bring it in. I cannot cross that threshold, right? Even less than an amma is a problem. So what am I going to do? So he says here, what do I do? In our situation, you get right to your house, which is a Rishus HaYachid. So whatever, it's a Carmelis or a Rishus HaRab, you're going to walk in. It's going to be a problem. So what should I do? Yizro kakis kila'achar yad lebeso. You know what you do? You usually go like this. I have an idea. Every kick in soccer, you take it and you fling on your foot, which is not a normal way. It's the thrown item. That's how you play soccer. That's not normal. If you're throwing an item, to a particular location, you throw it. You don't put it on your place on your foot and you kick it in. Or you don't take it and put it, let's say the baggie on your elbow, and you go, and you fling it in like this. So you do it kila'achar in an abnormal way. Because the only way you can violate a malacha on Shabbos is if it's done in the normal way. Okay? So that lowers it to a derabanan only. Kilachar doesn't make it mutter, lowers it to a derabanan. So you'll throw it in kilachar mishum hefset. The rabbis allowed here because of the hefset. Right? You made it all the way in this journey. You're going to leave the bag of $1,000 by outside your door, so it could still get stolen on Shabbos. Someone in the middle of the night will come and take it. So or at least that's a fear.
There's a Gemara that we read, and it says, if you put it on your chamor, your donkey, you go into the house, and it's. I remember that saying, like, you get to your house, and then you throw the stuff from the chamor on the floor.
Right.
So
in the house or outside?
Inside the house. So how do you get into the house? I'll show you.
I think it's the same. I think it has to be the same way.
Right.
It has to, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit. It has to be the same way.
So maybe you're not going inside, but you're going outside and flinging the.
You're flinging it in some abnormal way, not the normal way. If I take it and I just like think about how you see those when you go on in the airport and you're seeing them, those people who are loading the from the truck, where they carry those suitcases to the conveyor belt. If you ever watch them, they sometimes they throw it. Like this is normal action of taking a bag and throwing it. How is an abnormal way? You take a little bag and you I don't know, you put it on your shoulder and you go like this, or you put it on your foot and you fling it in with your foot. So you have to find some abnormal way to do it, which gets harder. I acknowledge. The heavier the bag, the much more difficult that is to do it in an abnormal way. I hear that. So he continues and says, that way you don't have a complete hachnasa entering. So even if you do a hanacha when you come close to the house, and even if it was placed down close to the house, so how are you going to get it in? Okay, I did a hachnasa. I did my 3 amos and I placed it down literally. So now what do? I get it into the house in some abnormal way. Whatever's not normal for this to be brought in, I do it that way to avoid the loss. Because of Hataz, the Taz writes. He writes, Lo yofe, osin osam, shenosin tinok lamul pachos me'arba amos. So, parallel case. What can we learn from this? Let's say there's a baby that needs a bris milah and the bris falls out on Shabbos. So the baby was born on Shabbos. The following Shabbos is the day of the bris, because we never do a bris on Shabbos unless that's the bo bayom day. If let's say the baby was born on a whatever day, and the first day it was born 2 weeks ago, and today happens to be the first day the baby's declared healthy to get a bris, you still do not do it on Shabbos. You'll postpone it to Sunday at that point. But let's say it falls out on Shabbos. So now what do I do? What do I do? There's no Eruv. No Eruv. What do I do? How do I get the baby to the shul to the moel to do the bris? The mitzvah d'oraisa to be done today. So the Taz writes it's not good what people are doing, that they carry the baby for a bris, and what do? They do pachos mikashir. They do less. They they walk with the baby 3 feet, or less than 6 feet, less than 4 amos. They stop, and they do this all the way to the shul. We're right over here. Okay, oops, wrong page. Right over here. Lo yafe osido santinot lo. Okay, right there. The mikol makom. Okay. The mikol makom yesh iser mashem motzim mirshus hayachid larachov shu karmelis. You know why? Because the moment you step out of your house carrying the baby who's 8 days old, that's it. That's an iser right there. The whole pachos mikashir doesn't help you until you are in the rishus, until you're in the karmelis. But you messed up by taking the baby from the house to the street. That by itself is already a problem. Forget how many steps you took. So the Taz is upset about this practice that he says many Jews seem to be doing when there's a bris on Shabbos. They take the baby out to the street and then they violate the hotzah mirishus l'rishus. So rather, what should you do? Now here, please do not throw the baby. From I'll throw the baby. No, that's a bad idea. So he says here, what you do? Find a non-Jew, have them carry the baby out from the house to the Carmelists, to the public street. Have them get, because then you can at least avoid that part. Then okay, walk less than 4 amos with your baby. But though it's funny because you're going to see here, with the Beis HaKnesses, how are you going to get it in the shul though? Shul's a private domain. So the Beis HaKnesses, Yachnisu Gamkein ala Eno Yehudi, the non-Jew should bring him in too. At that point, they just ask the non-Jew to carry the baby the whole way. Why are we making ourselves go? You would have going to carry the baby, I guess, but you're making yourself crazy. Pachos. At least ask the non-Jew at that point. By the way, I don't understand that. Unless there was no, the non-Jew here is different from the non-Jew there. This is my non-Jewish neighbor, and there it's the non-Jewish caretaker of the shul. Maybe I get maybe there. Anyways, the Maggid Avram writes Likaman b'Siman Shin Lamed Aleph Zipkat on Hay Ein Lasos Kain. He says the whole thing is nonsense. You shouldn't do this. Who says you have a permission to violate the Rabbanans when there's a perfectly good solution here? The Moel should come to you, right? And by the way, the Moel should drop off before Shabbos, the knife and whatever is needed in the house. If you know that you live in a city where there's no Eruv. This was not uncommon, by the way. There was a place where there was no Eruv. Today you go to the most Jewish communities, Baruch Hashem, in North America, and even probably in Europe, there's an Eruv. But it probably wasn't that long ago where that wasn't always the case. And certainly, hundreds of years ago, they had Eruv, and they did. But it wasn't as commonplace as we have, today. So let's say there was no Eruv in the town. So you do the bris at home. The Moel would drop off the items before Shabbos, and would come to the family on Shabbos morning, and they would do the bris in the home of the baby. It seems, though, according to the Taz, because it's very interesting from a historical perspective, the Taz seems to be upset that the bris is the bris seems to have been taken. Many of the brises that fell out on Shabbos seem to have been taking place, in shul, which is interesting. Okay, during the weekdays you can do whatever you want, but he's not happy with what they're doing by carrying the baby to shul. But that means that people were carrying the baby to shul. It's also just very interesting that the Mohel would go along with this, it's just an interesting observation. It could be that that's where the Mohel's equipment was, and for the Mohel to carry it to the baby's house is also a problem. So maybe the minhag became, okay, we allowed it. You'll ask a non-Jew to carry the baby, and pachos mikashir and whatever. But it seems that there may have been a practice where the Taz lived to always go to the shul to do it. Yeah,
And
Steve, what do you see?
here, he says he describes more like a fire brigade, where there'd be people and they would just hand the baby one to the other to the other.
Oh, throughout the street?
In the street.
Maybe that's for the minhag of the kvater. Ever see this minhag? So I don't know if you could hear. Everyone hear what Steve said on the? Steve was saying that there's a note in his edition of the Mishnah Berurah that there used to be a minhag that almost like people would line up in the street and they would pass the baby one to the other, so no one is ever carrying it, more than arba amos, and that's how they got the baby to the shul. I said maybe that's where some people have a minhag at the at the bris. They have a kvater. The kvater is a long-standing minhag. The kvater brings the baby, the kvater and the kvaterin. But maybe sometimes they have like a chain of people who hand the baby off. So maybe this is where it comes from, because on Shabbos they had to hand it off with a chain. Anyhow, let's take a look.
The only scenario I could see where you would do this, handing it to a non-Jew, blah blah blah, is if you have more than one bris that Shabbos. Then you can't. Then it's
So Moel
impractical to have the Moel drop his
he
stuff.
only has one knife.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that would have been a problem. Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
Otherwise, yeah, do it in your house. What's the big deal?
Yeah, that's what the Magen Avraham says. Yep. Okay, let's take a look at Yud Ches. Sif Katan Yud Ches. Pachos me arba amos, less than 4 amos. V'yamod lafush bein tayim, and you should stand to take a pause. Bein tayim, in between. Rega echad, of 1 moment, 1 second. You take your 3.9 amos. Stop. Okay, and weiter, and then you continue. Right. So rega echad lahafsik bein tayim. V'hanachas gufo k'hanachas chayfetz. When your body is at rest, this is physics, by the way. My dad, Zechron Allah, would have loved this statement. He was a scientist, right? If your body is at rest, the object is also at rest, right? That's how it works. Even though that's when you're on an airplane, you're in motion because the object that's carrying you is in motion, right? The airplane is going at 400 miles an hour. That means you're traveling at 400 miles an hour. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it's not happening. So here, when you're at rest, the object is at rest. So your resting is your assurance that the object stops moving. Because you could say, well, I might have stopped moving, but maybe I'm still moving a little bit. The assumption is like if you stop, that is a hanacha. Even though I didn't really stop enough in between for myself to really take a full rest or take a full break. The whole point here is not about you getting any moment of rest. It's to avoid that you carry arba amos in one continuous motion. And he says here, to finish off this comment, that's still called, standing. What's lafush mean, by the way? Did everyone have a? Here, hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna look it up quickly. I thought I remembered the word was. Now it's bothering me that I don't remember what the word means. Okay, lafush means to relax. Yeah, even though that's called relaxing. Even though you're not really relaxing for the purposes of halacha, that's relaxing. Okay, that's omed lafush. V'yesh machmir, in the Mishnah Berurah quote, there are those that are machmir shetzarich dafka leishev ben type. No, standing is not good enough. You have to go 3.9 amos and sit. That's how you know you're really at rest. Or you have to put the item down on the ground and then pick it back up. Now you're really making it hard on them, right? So that almost feels like a punishment. Okay. Kasvu ha'achronim, the achronim write, the pachos me'arba amos yoser adif sheyeh al yedei shnayim mi sheyeh al yedei echad. To Steve's point, this whole idea of pachos me'arba amos is better to do with 2 people than 1. Why? Because you're assured that you didn't go more than 4 amos. The person is standing there. I do a handoff. At the end of the day, I know I didn't go more than 4 amos. I have a better chance of not going 4 amos because I'm handing it off. If the person is standing within 6-7 feet of me, I won't violate this. And then you don't have to sit. You don't have to take a moment to relax standing. Because each time you hand it off, it's a new action, and therefore you could that might have been why by the way, that could explain why Steve has a comment in there that the minhag was when they carried the baby to shul, they would do a handoff because it was a faster way to get the baby to shul. And by the way, I also want you to think that it's not like in Scarsdale here, where people live, 20, 25-minute walks to shul. Everyone's in different directions. In days of old, the Jews were usually in a particular area of the town. They didn't live with such lengthy walks. I think in most places to their shul. So if you're imagining a human chain here, by the way, also like the next person would go to the back of the line. Like they wasn't like it wasn't like they lined 100 people up or 200 people up. They did this. They passed it in a chain. It was the fastest way to get the baby to shul. Okay, all right. Let's take a look now at Yud Tes Shaba'a Liyado. No, sorry, I forgot to read this part. Let's go back in the Shulchan Aruch. We'll read that, and then we'll look at the Mishnah Berurah. Top line of the page: V'dafka kiso o mitzia shaba'a liyodo. And this is specifically talking about your kis, your money carrier, right? Or a mitzia that came to your hand. You found it before Shabbos. About im lo ba liyodo. If you're walking, it's already Shabbos, and you see $100 bill on the floor, that's not a mitzia shaba'a liyodo. And you're not allowed to carry in any kind of fashion, even less pachos me'arba amos. It wasn't yours. It doesn't have the same relationship to you as the $100 bill that you picked up before Shabbos started. Take a look at your test in the Mishnah Berurah. Sheba aliyado hainu b'ba'od yom means before Shabbos started that you happened upon some item, some mitzia, you picked it up for halachic reasons. You were able to keep it, and you didn't have any obligation to, let's say, return it or something like that. As we talked about in Sif Aleph. Okay, now let's take a look at Sif Ches. We'll take a look at this quickly, and then we won't spend too much time. Then we'll pause. So Yesh Omrim. There are those that say this comes from Rabbeinu Yerucham. And all the things we've been talking about until now is dafka when you've been in a case, specifically in a case where it became dark on you while you were on the road. It became Shabbos while you were on the road. In a situation where I thought I had enough time to get where I was going to go on that day, and maybe I made a miscalculation, maybe something happened that I got delayed on the road. There was road construction, there was my donkey broke a leg, I don't know, so I got stuck. But if I left my house close to dark, and I didn't realize that I was actually carrying something. Or maybe let's say I forgot meaning I thought it wasn't that I thought I had enough time. It wasn't thinking. Shachach that it's going to be Shabbos. Shachach, I made a miscalculation, but it wasn't like I thought I was going to get there. I legitimately thought, and something happened, and I didn't make it. Here, if you had just taken a moment to think, you would have realized that this would have been a big problem. So then, lo hitiru lo b'shum echad mehadrachim ha'ilu. Then there's no permission for any of this stuff. Drop your item. Daven that it'll be there when Shabbos is over, and you'll walk the rest of the way home without violating any prohibitions whatsoever. That is this Yesh Omer. Take a look here at Chaf Aleph Chaf Beis in the Mishnah Berurah. He writes, Samuch lechashecha v'chulei hatam de posheyahu. Right? You are posheya, right? So I'm going to read this one more time.
It's not like it happened to you. You
Yeah, exactly. So he says here, you're being negligent. You know why we're not letting you get away with anything here? There's negligence involved. You were going out close to dark. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? You should have thought, maybe I'm going to, perhaps I will forget, and I'm going to end up carrying things. Oh, no, don't worry, I'm going to get where I need to get fast enough. Or I'm not sure what the shachach is here. I don't know if there's any over there. The shachach is a little bit of a funny word here, because what are you forgetting? You're forgetting that you're going to carry it. You have keys in your pocket. You go out close to dark. You're like, no, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. I'm not going to forget. I'll take my keys out of my pocket. But then it became Shabbos. What did you think was going to happen? Right? If you go, well, there's still early on Friday, middle of the day on Friday, and you're trying to get from A to B, and it's legitimate that you could make it to B, or at least it was a serious thought that it was possible. Nowadays we have GPS, so you know exactly when you should be able to get to where you're going to get to. But if you can estimate that it's possible, okay, then all these avenues are available to you. But if it's you go out, it's late in the day, but shachach that like I don't have enough time for this. Like, I think that's the shachach here. That you forgot that you don't really have enough time to get to where you're like. What were you thinking? Right? If you would think you were thinking for a second, then you would realize this doesn't make any sense. Then we don't allow you chaf beis lo hitiru. Oh, sorry, I skipped one by the way. Chaf was bayom shektsas ones chashiv, right? There was enough time in the day. That was, but it's okay because that's a little bit of a beyond your control, an accident. There was time. My donkey got sick. My whatever it is, something happened. It's a bit of an onus, right? For example, right? Let's say you were on the road. Even thinking in a car situation here, you're in a car. Um, you even check the GPS. There was plenty of time. Flat tire. Flat tires are not common enough to say that you have to build that into the schedule. You got a flat tire. That then AAA took them 2 hours to get there to change your tire, and now you're stuck in some circumstance. Similar here. If that's the kind of circumstance, that's okay to get to use one of these heterim. But if it was wholly predictable, if you just had to taken a moment to think, then not okay. Chaf beis lo hitiru lo. They didn't allow in any circumstance where there was negligence involved here. Rotzelo marshiyasek fi hamevar lekama b'sif yud beis behaga. Then you'll have to do like what it says in Sif Yud Beis in the Ramah, where there. By the way, I'm just going to read you the Ramah. I'm just giving you the heads up. If you probably could turn the page if you want to see it. In Yud Beis, he says, "Umish shachach kiso alav b'Shabbos." Let's say, "Oops, I forgot I have my wallet on me on Shabbos." Imhu bebeso yachol elech imo lacheder lahatir. So if I have it in my, if I'm in my house, I can go to my room and then I could dump it out of my pocket. Just kind of turn my, take my pants off and dump it upside down or something like that, and it'll fall out. Velipol sham ula hatsnio, and then I can put a pillow on it and hide it. Bashuk, if I'm in the middle of the marketplace, I realize I have on Shabbos, I'm carrying my wallet with me. So what do? So also lahaviu levesa, you can't carry it back to your house. Rak matir chagoro bashuk, loosen your chagoro is like the what do you call chagoro? It's like the apron. It's like the
belt that holds it.
Yeah, the belt that holds it, and it should fall. The Omer Yehudi l'shomer. When you go over to the non-Jewish store owner, in the United States, can you watch this for me over Shabbos? I can't carry it. Please watch it for me. If the non-Jew then on his own says, "Okay, I got it," picks it up and starts walking behind the Jew and walks it back to the house, that's okay. Okay, I didn't, as long as I didn't tell him to do that. So ein lachosha. Okay, so there's no problem there. So the same thing would have to be here. If you are in the scenario, you have to drop your wallet, and if there's someone around who you could say, "Hey, can you watch this for me?" Or you matir it, and you drop it behind this. You drop it somewhere. You have to. If you, I say there's no pillow you can put there on top of it, anyways, because you're already in Rosh Hashanah. You can't carry the pillow either. So they try to find somebody, and you say, "Hey, over here, I dropped my wallet. Can you please keep it safe?"
How is it different from the things we discussed before?
Because of the things we discussed before, we allowed you to get away with, put it on the back of the animal. We allowed you to give it to the katan.
Oh, because it's your fault.
Because it wasn't your fault. Because you had planned properly, and then you had a flat tire, or your donkey had a flat leg.
So, But the other case is because you made it close to Kashakar.
Yeah, there. I could have, if I just for a second I realized what time it is, what day it is. Like, of course I would know that I wouldn't make it, and therefore carrying is not allowed. Therefore, I have to drop it. So the Mishnah Berurah, back to the Mishnah Berurah here, he says, the yatir chagoro bashuk. What should I do? As we just explained, bimatir the belt that's holding whatever the bag of money in the marketplace, and ask an anju to watch it. That's your best option. With Sefer Eli Rabba Hevidas Rashba, the Rashba brought in the Eli Rabba Acholek Halahe Yesh Omrim, argues with the Yesh Omrim that we quoted here in this sif. Right, the Yesh Omrim that this is only if it's a case where you planned and it didn't work out. Usvirale the Gam Bazeh Yesh Lismoch Aladrachim Aniskar Lael. The chosav the yesh lismoch alav. So the Rashba, it's very important to know this, says that even if you walked out late in the day on Friday, you weren't thinking. I wouldn't call it mazed. Mazed, I don't know if we can get away with mazed. Mazed, I did it on purpose. I'm like, okay, I'll use one of these methods anyways. No, let's say I just negligent. I wasn't thinking. I went outside an hour before Shabbos. I went to go on. I'm going to somebody's house, and I knew I wasn't going to make it on Shabbos. Wasn't going to make it before Shabbos. I was going to make it on Shabbos, and I ended up carrying my keys with money in it. Oops. So then, according to the Yeshomer, I'm stuck. I have to drop the wallet. But according to the second opinion, I can keep. According to the Rashba, I can keep carrying the wallet. With one of the methods that we outlined before. And apparently the Eliyah Rabbah said we can rely on this Rashba. So, and it's not insignificant that the Mishnah Berurah brings it here, and that if you're stuck in a scenario, just remember that you can use one of these. You don't have to drop your wallet and wherever. You can use one of these methods, pachos mikashir, whatever. If you're in a place where carrying is a problem. If you're carrying a wallet in a place where there's an eruv, the carrying is not necessarily the issue. It's the muktzah piece that's the issue. There it probably should be very similar.
It's the Rabbanan, isn't it? Muktzah? The fact that you
100%. So there you should try to, if let's say this happened to somebody here in Shul some weeks ago, they realized that in their pants pocket there was a $20 bill. As a young fellow, who's
so it's not carrying.
Learned fellow. Yeah, he's just dealing money, handling money on Shabbos. It was in his pocket. He, shook out his pocket, and then he took the trash can in the hallway up here, placed the trash can on top of the money. It was near the coat area, so it was right. It was the trash can looked like it was really in its rightful place. He kind of emptied it right there near the trash can, placed the trash can on top of it. Then he came over to me and asked me, what should I do? I don't know what to do. Do I, am I allowed to ask the maintenance staff here to pick it up, and to keep it until after Shabbos? So I looked it up, by the way. We'll get to this later, or maybe we already got to it. Maybe we already got to it. But you're allowed to ask a non-Jew, and this is exactly this case. You're allowed to ask a non-Jew to watch it and to guard it. So I did that. I actually went over to Claudia, and I said, his $20 bill is under the trash can or whatever. Maybe it was $22 in the end. I said, can you keep it safe for him? So they did, and they kept it in the top. They moved it. I didn't tell them to move it. They moved it to the shul into my box in the office, and that's where the money was. So you're allowed. So you have to find someone to help you if you end up with money in your pocket. If you're in a private domain, so you could shake it out and put something on top of it to protect it if you're concerned. Again, if you're in your house, just
It's a different issue. I mean, if you're walking into shul and where there's an eruv,
it shouldn't be a difference in my head. You're right.
And you forgot to take your wallet out of your pocket.
So you should just keep walking. I think you should keep walking until you get to whether it's shul or if you're going home, until you get home, and then just shake it out. Because if there's an eruv, there's no carrying issue. And look, it's better not to be metaltel the money, but if you're in a private domain, right? Right, exactly. So I think in that situation, you should just continue walking, right? Don't stop, actually, and you'll get to a safe place. If you have a friend on the way, their house is right there. You could shake it out in their house. It's better to get rid of it as fast as you can. Okay, we did through Sifches. We'll stop here. Okay, we learned a lot today. Okay, we'll continue with Sif test next week. About what happens when you get to a chotzer, a chitzona hamishtameres, so the place where you can get rid of things off the animal, off the back of the animal, etc.
That is what we're going to talk, like I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you going to do when you get to the chotzer? It's not fully in the house, but it's a whole new rishus, from the street. So we'll talk about that. And then we're going to get to the very interesting case, maybe next week already, of tefillin on Shabbos. What happens if you got with you your tefillin bag? You can't just leave your tefillin by I'm stuck. I'll leave it by a tree here, outside in the middle of nowhere. What happens when you have your tefillin? Maybe you're even wearing your tefillin, and this will get into an interesting discussion of tefillin on Shabbos. why are you not allowed? Why don't we wear tefillin on Shabbos? And what is the status of tefillin? People sometimes, based on a Zohar, will treat tefillin as a very strict level of muktzah. It's not necessary. I remember this I learned with my Rebbe when we were learning Hilchot Shabbos, and not so partial that we should necessarily follow the Zohar on this one. There's other reasons to believe that the tefillin is not kadosh in such a way that you can't ever move it in any way, shape, or form. We don't wear tefillin. We'll talk about why we don't when we get there, but that will also be coming here down the pike. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
learning.